A very good morning to all the participants here. Before we start the program, there are a couple of pointers which we want you all to keep in mind. Well, like those who are there on Zoom platform, we request you all to be on mute mode. Otherwise, it will be disturbing the speaker and the process of the program as well. So we kindly request all the participants who are there on the Zoom platform to follow online etiquettes, right? We'll begin. So we will begin our today's program. On this warm and beautiful morning, I, Professor Soumya, is pleased to welcome each and every one of you to today's guest lecture on academic writing in language and literature. As aptly stated by Martin Luther King Jr., I quote, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically," I unquote. Well, our today's lecture is an humble attempt in this direction. To think critically and objectively is a useful skill to learn early on in life, as it will benefit both in academic as well as in real life situations. As we begin our day's program, I call upon Professor Anita to invoke the blessings of the God.
Meghashamam Pitakosheyavasam Srivatsangam Kaustubodhbasitangam Punyopetam Pundarikayataksam Vishnum Vande Lokaikanatham Vishnum Vande Lokaikanatham Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirghamaya Mrityorma Amritam Ghamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anita, for invoking the blessing for us.
Thank you.
I now request Professor Nishchita for a welcome address.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good morning to one and all present here. While it is obvious to feel happy to deliver the welcome address, I am also excited about this role as this online guest lecture, Academic Writing in Language and Literature, is organized with the intent of building research ability in our students. I deem it as my proud privilege to welcome our today's resource person, Dr. Yoganand Kore, a renowned scholar in the field of academics and research, for gladly accepting our invitation and to share his insights on academic writing with our students. I welcome you, sir. I accord a genial welcome to our beloved principal, Dr. Shashikala, a vibrant and charismatic personality and is always a constant guiding force in all our endeavors. I welcome you, madam. I extend a warm welcome to Professor Soumya, HOD, Department of English, whose foresight, guidance, and amicable nature has kept us motivated and at ease in the department. I am extremely happy to welcome all my enthusiastic and dedicated colleagues to today's event. And most importantly, I welcome all my dear students, the key stakeholders of today's session who have joined this guest lecture with great interest and enthusiasm. I welcome you all once again, and my dear students, I hope this session will broaden your horizon on academic writing and research. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Nistrita, for that warm welcome. I now invite Dr. Shashikala, Principal, Degree MLAC, for the presidential address.
Yeah, thank you, Soumya. A very good morning to one and all present here. I think you have chosen the topic of the day, and all of us know writing is an art. And academic writing is a formal approach towards writing, and it requires more focus on sentence formation, grammar, vocabulary, phrase, and spelling. It is a process of presenting ideas in a rational, organized, systematic, reasonable, and logical way. I think this will suit for all of us, whether be it a student, professors, researchers. In every discipline, academic writing is a valid area to convey ideas. Academic writing informs analysis and persuades in a straightforward manner and enable the reader to engage critically in a scholarly dialogue. And as all of us think, it is not a very easy one. It is so different from personal writing, and it should have a theme where everything is relevant to one main topic without unnecessary opinion and repetition of facts. I think I should congratulate the English department for having chosen this topic, which is going to be useful for each one of us and for everybody, which will be applied in all aspects, be it academic writing or in the area of research or writing any books or whatever research. It's going to be so useful, and it is not going to be as simple as we think, provided we know all the inner content there. Okay, so I'm very happy that English department has chosen this topic, and I congratulate all of them for having taken so much of being so enthusiastic in organizing this. And I extend this to the students, and I just hope that everybody will make the best use of this platform. Okay, and I think even the resource person will be so enthused to interact with the participants. Thank you. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, Soumya. All the best.
Thank you, ma'am, for setting the right tone for today's talk. We'll now move on to today's speaker's introduction. I now call Professor Ashwini to introduce our day's speaker to the gathering.
Good morning, everyone. And I take immense pleasure in introducing today's resource person. Dr. Yoganand Kore has taught English at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels in well-known colleges in Bengaluru for over 33 years. He earned his master's degree from Bengaluru University and also holds MPhil and PhD degrees. His MPhil thesis title is Animal Narratives as Social and Cultural Texts, and his doctoral thesis was on popular culture and literature with thesis title License to Thrill, Mapping the Literary Origins and Sociology of Thriller Narratives. He has edited several books and published over 40 research papers in national and international journals. apart from being on the editorial and review panels of reputed journals. He is on the board of studies of several universities and colleges in India and also is supervising MPhil and PhD research dissertations. His areas of interest are popular culture studies, eco-criticism, Indian drama, curriculum and research designs. Now I request Professor Soumya to take this session further.
Thank you, Professor, for the crisp introduction. I once again request all the participants to mute your audio. Yes, it is time for the much awaited part of today's program. Without much ado, I now request Dr. Yoganand Kore to share his insights on academic writing in language and literature. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning. And before I begin the session, I'd like to thank the principal, the Department of English of Mani College for having invited me to interact with the students of the college. Thank you very much. That is one. Second, I would like to request you to give me the screen sharing option if it is possible, ma'am. Would it be possible for you to give
Yes.
the screen sharing option?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I have the screen sharing option now. Let me begin my session by saying two things. First thing is, since I'm working from home or I'm doing this on a virtual platform, it is possible that there may be certain ambient noises. Kindly forbear, kindly forgive me for that. There's no way I can control. I can exercise any control over these ambient noises. Some construction activity going on near my house. So therefore, it might be possible. It would be possible. It is possible that you might hear certain jarring noises. Please forgive me for that. I have no control over that, as you're all aware. Second, let me probably begin the session by asking you, what exactly do you want to know? I mean, of course, I'm here to talk to you on academic writing, research, etc., and language and literature. Yes, I'm here to talk to you about that. But it would be nice if you could tell me what exactly it is that you want to know from me, so that I can organize my talk or this presentation to focus on the areas of anxiety, areas of concern to you. Can you please, anyone can let me know what exactly it is that you want to know? I'd be very happy, because that will help me address or structure my talk or this presentation, make it a little more useful and meaningful to you. Otherwise, I'll simply be talking about it in very general terms. So if I know what exactly your concerns are, maybe it would be possible for me to address your concerns and be helpful to you directly. Anyone, please? No one? I'll give you another minute. Maybe you may want to formulate your thoughts and then articulate it. It may take a couple of seconds. Please go ahead. I'm here waiting. Please let me know, what exactly do you want to know? Where should I begin? Because if I have to talk about research, academic writing, I can start at any point. So I'd like to know where exactly it is that I must start. If you can give me some pointers or some help there, maybe I can begin and address your concerns. Please go ahead. Okay, since you find it a little difficult to speak to me straight away, I can understand, because I haven't met you and you haven't met me, and therefore there is a kind of
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Like couple of them, they have joined via YouTube platform as well, because they couldn't join via Zoom. So here we have Miss Rachna Rao. She says that as we are new to dissertation, we are quite confused. Sir, we want your guidance at it. Okay, so this is what she says. In the sense, like they have zero knowledge about research, so they want to know like what they are expected to know as a student, like as degree students. So if you could touch upon all those things.
Yeah, that I'll do. That I'll do. Apart from that, anything else? Yes, that I'll do.
Okay, so Deepika C of CBZ also says same doubt. How should we start these project works, sir? Like ideas. So selecting the topic, starting with selecting the topic, and then selecting the methodology to address the problems. So there are like these are the concerns that they are raising, sir.
Okay, and then that gives me a start. See, basically, academic writing, as your principal ma'am pointed out, is different from many other kind of writing. In our English classes, maybe in our earlier classes, let's say 6th standard, 7th standard, or maybe even 10th standard or 12th standard, in our English classes, we were always given an essay to write or essays to write. If you remember something of the kind of topics that were given to write essays or short paragraphs on, if you remember, they basically either were narrative or descriptive. For example, you might have been asked to write about a very important person or your very close friend or someone that you admire, or a very interesting experience that you've had, or a visit to a place. See, these are the kind of topics that we usually get to write on in our English classes. These are basically narrative and descriptive writing. Here, the language is not very formal, it can be informal. The idea here is to communicate an experience, or describe a person, or describe an experience, or narrate an incident. So it is more oriented towards saying something that one personally has experienced, or one person has been impressed with. Now, those kind of writings, though they may take place in English classes or assignments that may be given by the teachers teaching in the English department, they don't strictly qualify as academic writing. Academic writing basically is something that conveys and argues. In other words, when I write an academic paper, or when I do any kind of academic writing, see, when I say academic writing, this means your assignment, the assignments that you write can be included in academic writing. Even to an extent, the answers that you write in your exams can be considered as kind of academic writing. But more specifically, it appears to me that you are required to do dissertation. And that dissertation is something that is typically associated with academic writing. Now, what happens in academic writing, which is a little different from other kinds of writing, that say descriptive writing or narrative writing, is this: that you have a point and you argue your point. So basically, academic writing is characterized by an argument. Everything in academic writing is centered around or revolves around an argument. Now, how do you propose that argument? That is, how do you put forward that argument? And how do you go about arguing your point of view? And why is it that you have to argue your point of view? You have to do that basically to convince me, or you can convince your readers, persuade, what we call as persuasion. In other words, all of us do research, and what exactly is it that we do our research on? That's one question. But when we do research, academic writing is characterized by research. However, when it comes to say something like narrative writing or descriptive writing, it doesn't revolve around research. It may involve a bit of research, that is doing some reference work, looking up some references, maybe, especially if you're writing about a place. Maybe you visited the place and you would like to describe the place, but as you're describing the place, you would also want certain certain things that are associated with the place to be included in your writing, to become a part of your writing. So there may be a bit of research involved there, but does not exclusively uh, revolve around research. There may be a bit of research. That way, you see, everyone does research. Whether you are a student, whether you're doing an academic writing, your dissertation or research paper, or even if you're buying something like, say, a car, everyone does research. In the sense that when you are buying a car, it's not as if you go to a showroom and then buy whatever car is available there. No, no one does that. Because it involves lakhs of rupees. We're all very, very careful. Why lakhs of rupees? Even if it is vegetable, we all do our own research. Our sisters, mothers, etc. at home do their research, in the sense that they try to find out uh, what the vegetables, where is it available, one. Then they do make a comparison between the prices, the cost of the vegetable, particular vegetable, if it is that, in one shop and in another shop. And then they also take into account the quality, the freshness, etc. So there is a bit of research in everything that we do. But the difference here, when we come to what we call as research in academic context, is this: that in academic context, it usually is for persuasion, for presenting our argument and our point of view. Whereas when it comes to, say, doing some research that concerns buying or something like that, a car or vegetable or whatever, there the focus more is on arriving at a decision. That is, which car do you have to buy and where do you have to buy, which vegetable has to be bought at bought where. You see, so therefore that is more oriented towards making a decision that helps us live our day-to-day lives. But here, when it comes to academic writing, it is a point that we have, or rather an argument that we have, a point of view that we have developed, and we present it in terms of an argument. And when we present it in terms of an argument, it usually results in a research paper or a dissertation. The difference between a dissertation and a research paper is smaller in length, whereas a dissertation is slightly longer. Thesis is much longer. But all of them do involve, what is common to all of them is that they involve research, and they involve articulation or expression in certain formal terms which follow certain conventions. So academic writing basically is characterized by two things: presenting your argument in a convincing manner. Second, it must be conveyed in very, very formal terms. By formal terms, I mean there are certain conventions that are to be followed. These conventions are conventions that are universally followed. It doesn't matter which college you study in, which university you study in, irrespective of which country you are studying in, irrespective of that, you will be required to follow these conventions. These conventions are more or less what will be called as universal. And whatever academic writing, whenever any academic writing is attempted or done, it has to follow these conventions. What are the conventions? Basically, at the outset, I might say it has to follow, say, certain protocols. By protocols, I mean there must be certain components in your research paper. Whether you are writing a research paper in language or literature, here I am to specifically speak about research in language and literature. but some of it is common to any discipline, commerce, maybe economics, maybe even sciences, maybe social sciences, psychology, maybe journalism, maybe botany, maybe it doesn't matter. You see, because research cuts across. You can do your research in any field or any discipline. So that part is something which is common. But how do we present it? Certain disciplines have their own conventions. Literary departments have their own conventions. Commerce departments will have their own conventions. Social sciences, departments in social sciences will have their own conventions. Uh, Basically, it means you have to understand the conventions. It has to be presented in a specific format, which is universally acceptable. And there are certain, as I told you, conventions. By conventions, what I mean is certain etiquettes, or what you would call as etiquettes, or certain the presence of certain components. It must be presented in formal language. We cannot use informal language. Of course, that way students are required to use formal language even in their exams, for example, your answer papers. But often we do come across as teachers. I have come across a lot of English teachers would have come across this, and they may have also commented about this in the class, commented on this on in your class, that we use short forms in our answers. Well, to an extent, that's not to be allowed. But then English teachers are being a little liberal. They'll say, okay, anyway, what is more important is that the student has been able to convey the idea, even if the student has used certain informal aspects of language. So therefore, in academic writing, especially when you do a research paper or when you do your dissertation, you are required to be very, very formal in the way you communicate. Please remember that there is a lot of difference between formal language and informal language. And when we use formal language, remember, we always use third person. We don't usually use I, we, etc. We use a third person, and then the kind of word that we choose are also a little different. Therefore, one of the most important aspects of academic writing is the use of language. Of course, that way, whenever you use language, you are required to be grammatically correct. It doesn't matter which language you use. Certain an amount of grammatical appropriateness, correctness would be expected. But then it also depends at which level you're using the language, any language for that matter. If you're using a language, say, with an auto driver, well, it's not necessary that you should speak to him or her in grammatically correct language. Lots of times when we travel to other parts of India, we may not know the local language, and we may use, say, either English or Hindi, which may not be the native language there, which Hindi may not be the native language there, especially if we have to travel to say something like, say, West Bengal. Hindi is not the local language there, but Bengali is something that most of us may not know. And English may be something that the auto driver may not know. So then how do you communicate? You may not be very conversant with Hindi. Well then, these days, because Hindi movies, Hindi songs have become very, very popular, some of us, even without having lived in any of the Hindi speaking belts, or speaking Hindi at home, in not being a native language, our first language, I mean, we still can communicate. Say certain basic things like, this is where I have to go, or how much you charge, or something like this. And that may be expressed in not grammatically very, very correct or appropriate language. But what is more important is that it succeeds in communicating, that is, the meaning, the semantic. Two aspects then when it comes to any language usage for that matter. One is grammatical appropriateness, grammatical correctness is one. Second is the meaning. Between the two, in contexts in which communication is important, grammatical appropriateness is not very, very important. It is the meaning That's very important. If we are able to communicate where you want to go in whatever grammatically appropriate or in slightly inappropriate language, and you are able to communicate that to him successfully, that is enough, because your objective ultimately is to go to the place that you want to go. So we can be a little relaxed insofar as the grammatical appropriateness is concerned in those contexts. But when it comes to formal context, then grammatical correctness is absolutely necessary as much as semantics, that is the meaning part of it, is concerned. So when we come to academic writing, grammatical correctness is as important as the ideas that we communicate and how we communicate, the clarity. These become very, very important when it comes to academic writing. Also, academic writing is a result of research. If you have not done any research, there can be nothing that you can write on, because basically when you write a report, or rather when you write a dissertation or a paper, the paper and the dissertation, as I told you, is actually a kind of a report of your research. As you carried out your research, and as you carried out your research, you have arrived at certain what should we say, findings, and these findings have to be presented. How you present it, what you present, is what's called either as a research paper or a dissertation, depending upon its length. Now, this is what dissertation or a research paper basically means. That means you conducted your research, and as a result of your research, you have arrived at certain conclusions, or you have arrived at certain major findings. And this is what is to be presented. That becomes your dissertation, or that becomes your research paper. Remember the difference between research paper and dissertation. Well, there are certain minor differences, but the most important difference that I see between the two is the length. A research paper is briefer, maybe it takes 3,000, 4,000 words, whereas a dissertation can go on to say 30, 35 pages, or even 80 pages or 100 pages. So depending upon the length, it would be possible for us to say that this is a research paper and this is a dissertation. Apart from that, most other things are similar. Both of them are a result of the research that you have carried out, the product of the research that you have carried out. So basically, if you have to write an academic paper, there's no way that you can write an academic paper or do any kind of academic writing without having done some research. Even if you have to present an assignment, it is necessary for you to have done some research. But there, the research is more in terms of trying to get the information that's available in different sources and putting it together. That's the difference between an assignment paper and research paper. And then another difference between your assignment paper and research paper is this. In an assignment paper, your teachers give you the topic. The teachers give you the title or the topic on which you do some reference work and then present your assignment. Whereas when it comes to research paper or a dissertation, you choose the topic. No one gives you the topic, you choose the topic. Now, often, most of the times I'm teaching at the postgraduate level or the doctoral level. Most of the times, lots of students come to me and ask, "Sir, can you suggest a topic? Can you suggest a topic?" Now, I find it a little embarrassing or a little difficult to answer these questions. Can you suggest a topic? Remember, one of the first things that as a researcher one must learn is not to ask your teachers or your supervisors, whoever your supervisors may be, for a topic. You must be able to identify a topic. How is that to be done? That's what I will talk about. Anyway, before that, also remember, when we talk about research, there are different kinds of research depending on the methods that you adopt to conduct your research. One is what we call as qualitative research, the other is quantitative research. Now, to talk about quantitative research is what you would find in most social sciences, say economics or psychology, sociology. In disciplines like this, the kind of research that you would do more often than not is quantitative. Similarly, when it comes to, say, commerce management, it is quantitative. When it comes to sciences, it may probably have to do uh, a lot, again, uh, quantitative, which is quantitative. Qualitative, in other words, is something that we typically follow or use in humanities, especially liberal arts, literature, especially. Now, what is the difference between the two? The difference between the two is what we call as data. Now, what we call as data in quantitative, look at the term quantitative. Quantitative has to do with statistics numbers. So basically, any research that involves a lot of statistics numbers is what we call as quantitative. On the other hand, where you don't have to deal with numbers, it's more textual in nature, then that is qualitative. One of the most important problems that researchers in quant is, okay, then how does it concern our English studies? See, if you were to do some research, say, with regard to language, by language, I mean the different aspects of language. We have what's called as a phonetic aspect of language, that is spoken aspect of language. And then we have the morphological aspects, that is connected with words, how words are formed, morphemes, etc. And then we also have syntactic, that means how sentences are, how words come together, how different words come together to form meaningful sentences. How do we organize language to form, or rather to arrive at meaning? Uh, See, when we use language, language has to be used in a specific way. If it's not used in a specific way, it does not yield meaning. So we have to organize language in order to make meaning. So how does that happen? Now, when we start doing research in these areas, basically they are what may be called as language studies. Uh, then again, when we do researches in language studies, they are bound to be generally quantitative in nature. That means you don't have the data. That means you need something to analyze, right? Uh, what is it that you will analyze? So you don't have anything to analyze, but you have a topic. For example, how does the knowledge of one language impact the other language? There may be people who know two languages or more than two languages. So then, how does their first language or one language that they've learned, how does it impact? How does it organize, or what kind of an effect does it have on the other language that they may have learned? Now, if you have to study this, this can become a research paper or a dissertation. This can be uh, a topic for research. Now, if you have to do that, please notice you don't have any data. You may have an idea based on your observation. You may have seen quite a lot of people who share these characteristics. By these characteristics, I mean people who know two languages, a minimum of two languages, say Kannada and English, for example. Of course, a person may know more languages. I'm just giving you a very um, easy kind of an example to understand. That is all. So I'm assuming here that a person knows two languages, that is English and Kannada. We come across a lot of people who know these two languages, Kannada and English. What happens to, in a research like this, what happens to people who know Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, etc.? Now, what we do is we have to select only those people who fulfill this particular requirement. That is, they must know only two languages. Now you may say, sir, that is impossible. Yeah, I understand that is impossible. But remember, I'm only giving you an example. If you live in a place like Bangalore, you will definitely know 3 or 4 languages. But I'm just giving you an example. That's all. Remember. So this is only for the sake of illustration. So assume that I know Hindi and English and Kannada, and the language that I've learned is English, Hindi first. Kannada first, and then I've learned English. So now I go around in the course of my informal interaction with my friends, neighbors, etc., who share these characteristics, that is, knowing 2 languages. I noticed that this is how research begins. I noticed that there is some similarity in all these 10, 12 people that I know with these characteristics, knowing these 2 languages, in how they speak English. So now, what is common to them? Now I find out that what's common to them is the fact that they know these 2 languages and they learned Kannada first and then they learned English. These are, see, you don't go with any topic as such. You see, topics, how do we select topics? Selection of topics depends upon our observation, how very observant we are. And I'm giving you an example in language. I will also give you an example in literature, literary studies. And now I'm talking to you about qualitative and quantitative studies. So this is an example that I'm giving you, which is within the realm of English, but is not qualitative, but is quantitative. That means basically you have to go around finding those people, finding a sample, a large number of samples, say 20, 40, 50, 60, whatever. And then you study them. I mean, you collect data from them. You can collect data in different ways, subject them to certain tests, or in this case, yeah, you give them certain tasks and then look at their responses. Is the influence on their spoken language? Is there influence in terms of syntactics, that is, construction of sentences in English, or in terms of words, morphology, etc., etc. So you isolate one particular area of influence, impact, and then study it. You take a large number of samples. You take, say, 50, 40 people who share the same characteristics, and then subject them to the same kind of tests or tasks, give them the same kind of tasks or tests or whatever, and then obtain the data and make an analysis. Could you please mute all of you? Kindly, I request you to mute. Kavya, please limit. Kavya V, please mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Kavya. So as I was saying, you don't have any data, you collect your data. In this case, we collect data by giving some tasks or assignments and then collecting it and then analyzing it. In certain other cases, it's possible that we may collect data by the way of questionnaires or surveys or interviews. So basically, this is a question of numbers. How many people's responses have we received? Is the sample size large enough? These kind of considerations will operate in quantitative analysis or quantitative studies. When it comes to literary studies, what will work? So a student basically, if she or he is involved in quantitative studies, will spend more time in gathering the data, collecting the data, and less time later in analyzing it. So for analysis in quantitative studies, the time taken is lesser. As for example, someone may be doing research in physics. The amount of time that the student takes in labs getting the data, getting the information, experiments, etc., conducting experiments and getting the data. That will take time. Usually in quantitative studies, getting the data will take time. Analysis may not take time, and then arriving at conclusions may not take time, because you're simply interpreting whatever data you have, whatever numbers you have. Whereas in qualitative, you don't have the data, you already have the data. That means texts have already been written, novels have already been written, short stories have already been written, poems have been already written. So here you don't have to go out to get your data, but you spend more time on analysis, what we call as textual analysis. So basically, you have to decide whether the topic that you choose, that whether you want to do a quantitative study or a qualitative study. Generally, like I said, 90% of studies in literature are qualitative in nature. So they will involve analysis. They will involve textual analysis. You will have to do a lot of reading, and then based on that you analyze the text that you've chosen. Also remember that real research is always an addition to the existing body of knowledge. Ideal research. What I'm trying to say is, in any given topic or in any given discipline, there is a certain amount of knowledge that is already existing, that exists. Your research should add to what exists already. Remember, what knowledge exists is a result of researches that may have been conducted by a lot of others. So they have added to the existing body of knowledge. I mean, to the body of knowledge. So what exists, you add to it. That is what research is. That is basically how research is defined as. And research depends upon investigation. It could be investigation, quantitative kind of investigation or qualitative kind of an investigation. Basically, you begin with an argument. You have no argument, there is no research. And what I'm about to tell you is how to select a topic and then go on doing your writing. I have a small presentation. I will share those slides. Here it is. Yeah. I've titled this writing about literature, but if there are any specific questions about doing research or writing about language, please let me know. As and when as I go along, I'll also try to talk to you about research in language, if there is anyone who's interested in it or anyone wants to think about it. Yeah, basically, you see, what makes a good literature paper? Like I told you a few minutes ago, any research will revolve around an argument. Like I said, no argument, no research. So when you are writing a literary essay or a paper or a dissertation, which indeed will require research. So you are making an argument, and your entire dissertation or research paper is presenting your perspective. It could be an interpretation or an evaluative judgment or a critical judgment. And this, the argument is this, that your point of view is a valid one. See, I may not entirely be in agreement with your perspective or your point of view. But then the nature of academics is such that we have to leave our preferred ideological positions. I may not agree with you on certain topics, but then I will have to accept that you have a point of view. Rather, you have a valid point, and your point of view is a valid one. We don't, as far as possible in academics, we don't believe that there is only one perspective to anything. There can be multiple perspectives. Meaning, in other words, when you read a poem, it's not necessary that it should have only one meaning. It can have hundreds of meanings. It is possible. And it is not to say that one meaning is more important or more valid than the other. No, all meanings are valid. It depends on how you try to present your argument. That is, how convincing you are, how persuasive you are in presenting your point of view. My point of view, rather, the meaning that I may make of the poem may be very different from the meaning that you make. But then, like I said, the nature of academics is to enlarge the scope of our understanding. So therefore, if I feel that the poem means something, then I read what you have written, and I see that you have a totally different you have a totally different take on the poem. Then what it does to me is it enhances it extends my understanding of the poem. So that poem is so great that it can accommodate my point of view. It can also accommodate your point of view. Here, it's not important as to this is not a case where I say that the meaning that I have derived is more important than the meaning that you have derived. No, the point is, if I have to accept your meaning as important, then it must be presented in a convincing manner. So remember, any research, any writing, especially in literature, it revolves around an argument. So when you look for a topic, you are basically looking for an argument. So this argument is presented in the form of what we call as a thesis statement. A thesis is an idea. Basically, if you look at the etymology of the word thesis, it basically means an idea, presenting an idea, positing an idea. So you must have a specific detailed thesis statement. It may be in one sentence or maybe in maximum one sentence. That's all it is possible. And that should reveal your perspective. And your perspective must be debatable. Remember, in academics, this is very, very important. Whatever argument you present, because it's an argument, remember, basically, debate is a very integral part, an important part of an argument. So when I present an argument, it is not as if there is no counter argument to it. There can be counter argument to it. That's what makes it debatable. That's when it becomes debatable. So the argument that I present must be open to debate. It must not be, see, you cannot argue if a door is fully open or fully closed. It's not you saying that the door is open or the door is closed is not debatable. Everyone can see that. Everyone will accept that. So therefore, those things that are obvious can never be your topics at all. Your topic must be a debatable topic. It must have a counter argument possible for it. It must yield to a counter argument. There must be some people who may have an opposite point of view, and your topic must accommodate that. If your topic is saying something, say, very obvious, say sun rises in the east, where is the argument there? You don't have to argue anything there. And the sun sets in the west, where is the argument there? Everyone knows it. It's obvious. So of course, when it must have been presented first thousands of years ago, that sun rises in the east, then that may have been a little debatable. But now it is something that is commonly accepted. Milk is white. Who can argue against that? So these cannot become your topics. Your topic must be debatable, because it's only because your research concerns an argument, it must have a counter argument possible for it. So it must be debatable. Remember, whatever topic you choose must be debatable. For example, you see here, I don't know how many of you have read Hamlet. Well, since this is a presentation I'm giving concerning literature, I have to take examples from some text or the other. Possible that you may not have read the text, but however, I'm sure these examples are fairly straightforward and simple for you to understand, even if you have not read Hamlet, for example, Shakespeare. So if you begin this way, Shakespeare's Hamlet is a play about a young man who seeks revenge. That's obvious. That is not researchable at all, because you are only summarizing and there is no debate, there is no argument. Remember, when you select a topic, it must not be something that leads to summarization. It must be a point of view, and that must be debatable. So if you can present it something like this: Hamlet experiences internal conflict because he is in love with his mother. Now that's debatable. Look at the formulation, same play, Hamlet, both of them. The first one, Shakespeare's Hamlet, is a play about a young man who seeks revenge. This is only summary. This is not debatable. Whereas this is debatable. Hamlet experiences internal conflict because he's in love with his mother. That is debatable. Well, as you can see, it can even be controversial. And then once you frame your topic, select your topic, then you choose specific examples from the text to prove your point. For example, if you are arguing that Hamlet experiences internal conflict because he's in love with his mother, sorry?
Sorry, auntie.
Well, I think someone has accidentally unmuted herself. Kindly mute yourself, please, all of you. Well, then, so how do you argue that? First, you will have to prove that Hamlet is in love with his mother. Second is, why is he in love with her? If you have to make your argument a valid one, acceptable one, then you will have to understand, convince me about these two. And then what implications there are for reading the play in this manner. So how does it impact our reading of Hamlet in this way? Seeing Hamlet as Hamlet's internal conflicts as a result of him being in love with his mother. So you can see here with this example, you can see the kind of topics that you can choose. Also avoid a thesis statement like this. Say spirituality means different things to different people. King Lear, the Book of Romans, and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance each view the spirit differently. Obviously, if you're arguing that Keats is different from Shelley, or if you're arguing that Shakespeare is different from Milton, there's no argument there, because they're two different writers. Obviously, they will be different. So there is no argument in topics like that. However, if you select one particular aspect and see how they are different, how exactly are they different. For example, here, Lear, Romans and Zen each view the soul as the center of human personality, but each of them do it differently. Here, you can see that you have zeroed in on a specific topic, a specific aspect of what we call as spirituality. This can be researchable. This can be researchable, whereas the one that's there in the on the top here, this is not researchable. There's nothing debatable here. Here there is something that is debatable. Then once we do this, then we take specific examples from King Lear, Book of Romans, and Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The book, there are three different books, and we take examples from the text and show that the soul, all the three look at the soul as a center of personality. It can be an argument. Here, these are some kinds of topics that are good ones. So you can have a discussion of works characters. Are they realistic, symbolic, historically based? Or some topic like this, a comparison contrast of choices different authors or characters make in a work. For example, if you have two writers, and look at, say, the institution of marriage in different ways. or present different views on women, then that can become researchable. So basically, that would be a comparison or a contrast on a specific topic or a specific aspect. Then you could use certain philosophical perspectives, say psychoanalytic perspectives, the one that this example that we gave on Hamlet, this list, you see, this is typically how a psychoanalyst, when you apply psychoanalytical theories to texts, say a text like Hamlet, this is how you would argue. So that means, in other words, you are making use of certain theories that are available in another discipline, not necessarily purely literature, another discipline like, say, psychoanalysis, and then apply that to the text that you're reading. That means to the analysis of the characters or themes in the play or in the novel or in the short story or in the poem you've chosen. Or, for example, you may say a study of sources or historical events that occasioned a particular work, as, for example, comparing uh, Bernard Shaw's great play Pygmalion with the original Greek myth of Pygmalion. Then analysis of a specific image occurring in several works. For example, the use of moon you can take 2 or 3 novels or 2 or 3 short stories or 2 or 3 poems and see how the same image works. For example, one particular short story may make use of the image in a specific way, so of the moon. Then look around, are there any other short stories or poems that also use the image of moon in their poem, in the text or in the novel or in the short story? Then make a comparison. How is the image of moon used here? What meaning does it get here in this text? What meaning does it get in some other text? So that could be again a topic that you could choose, or we usually call this deconstruction, but this might be a little maybe a little out of reach for you because you're UG students and you don't do official English. So maybe something say deconstruction. This may not be something that you can understand very easily. So we will leave that. And then reading from a political perspective. So how would a Marxist, for example, read William Blake's London, a poem, or a study of social, political, economic context in which a work was written? How does it in context influence the work? For example, quite a lot of novels were written during India's independence movement, or for that matter, say emergency. So how did the political context, that is emergency or the independence movement, affect the literary text or the behavior of people? And how is that behavior reflected in the text? You can. All these are topics that you can choose. These are some, of course. Apart from this, you can choose topics based on other considerations. These are some 7 or 8 ones that you can choose that I would suggest, because they are very simple to begin with. But please remember, any topic that you choose must derive out of or originate out of your own reading of a work of literature, or even for that matter, a movie. What I'm trying to say is, when you read a novel, or when you read a short story, or when you watch a movie, after all, more of our youngsters watch movies or TV serials than read. They may have their own reasons for that. Now, when you do that, please notice, look at certain reactions or responses, your own responses or your own reactions. How are you responding? Is there something in a particular serial or in a particular movie that seems to be of interest to you? That seems to be a little interesting. And why is it interesting? You see, it begins with a general observation. And when you start thinking about it, then slowly it will become clearer for you. For example, why do women in a specific position seem to be behaving in a specific manner in a particular serial or in a particular movie? I'm just giving you an example because you're all young girls, giving you an example of women. You can say how is the image of uh, uh, say college going student portrayed in a particular movie or in a particular serial or in a novel, if you can come across these kind of novels, if you read these kind of novels. It does not in today, though we talk about research in literature, we also include movies, graphic narratives, uh, film text, etc. You can even select topics from serials, TV serial that you see. You can even select topics from some popular songs. So you can take some 5 or 6 popular songs, Hindi movie songs, or any movies songs, and then see if there is a particular image that is being used, a particular idea that is being communicated, and how these different songs are communicating these different things in different ways. So all these can become topics for you to select and choose. That's something that you can do. Once you've chosen your topic, remember it must be debatable. Once that is done, then what's the next thing that you do? This one. This is what we call as getting to know as much as possible about what topic seems to be interesting to you. And the best place to start today is internet. Everyone seems to have access to internet these days. But what you basically get in the internet is some basic biographical information on writers or directors, etc. Some brief summaries, even some elementary level analysis. That is a good start. That's how you begin your research. And then if you have access to a very good library, well, then you will be able to get a lot of information. So the first thing that you do is select a topic. And how do you select a topic? I've told you. Observe, look at yourself. Do you find something very interesting in a movie, in a documentary, or say, for example, if you are the kind who likes wildlife, please notice in most of these documentaries, uh, say that we get to see on National Geographic or Discovery Channel or Animal Planet, most of them, when they are discussing about animals, they're always talking about animals in terms of human relationships, or rather, the kind of human relationships that exist, or relationships that exist in human societies. As for example, father, mother, brother, sister, these kind of relationships that exist in human societies are mapped onto animals too. Now the question is, we may, as human beings, see ourselves as being related to other someone else as a brother, a sister, father, mother, uncle, aunt, etc. But do the animals see it that way? Which means basically human values are being imposed on the world of animals. Now, what does that mean? That's something that you can see. So what I'm trying to say is, if you actually are a little perceptive, open-minded, you will be able to find topics almost anywhere and everywhere, not necessarily in literary texts. Yes, you are required to do your dissertation or your paper in literature department, yes, but literary studies today includes film narratives or even these documentaries, the TV serials. You can use them. After all, these days, more number of people watch movies or these documentaries. than read. So, and they are also texts. Hence, these are allowed in literature departments today. So whether it is a movie or a novel or a short story or a poem or a TV documentary or a serial that you've seen, please, when you observe that, that's what we mean. You see, when you watch these serials, these movies, how exactly do you watch? If you watch them in a critical, with a critical mindset, then you will be able to notice these things. Is a particular character, the character of the maid, that is, who's employed to help us with our everyday work at home, especially the cleaning, the household work at home. How is that portrayed in a particular serial or in a particular movie? See, that can also become your research topic. So basically, your research topic, remember, must emerge from something related to your own observation, your own experience. Always remember that. And this must be debatable, controversial, not obvious, not very obvious. So you can take a couple of examples, advertisements, for example, and then see how, say, for example, women may be portrayed. That's very common. Or something else, how children are portrayed. Are they portrayed in very romantic terms? That means children as being always truthful, always sincere, always innocent. Now, whether children are really always innocent, truthful, etc., is a different issue. Now, we have come to believe that children are very innocent, etc., because of these kind of advertisements or movies, or the kind of the way they are presented in novels or poems or movies, etc. So we tend to get that idea. We tend to associate innocence with children. So how does a particular movie or how does a particular serial depict children? Remember, there are certain texts that don't depict children as very innocent. For example, you can take a look at William Golding's novel, Lord of the Flies. It does not exactly depict children as innocent. So you can have these kind of narratives too, these kind of movies too. And I'm just giving you an example, children as for example. You can take any character or the depiction of any person there in how are villains projected. For example, what kind of villains did we have in movies that were made in the 1960s? What kind of villains do we have in movies that were made in 1980s? What kind of villains do we have in movies that are being made now? They're different. See, in the 1960s, 1950s, 1960s, villains were always seen as the Britishers. When India still was under the British rule and India had just got independent. Now, if you look at most of the movies there, you will see that villains generally were seen as Britishers. But when we come to 1980s, we see villains being smugglers, or villains being, say, government officials, ministers, even lawyers, judges. These people as being projected as even police officers, as being villains. So you can see the very idea of who or what is seen as a villain by a society has changed, keeps changing over a period of time. So then the idea of who or what constitutes a hero, because the word hero, villain, all these are filled with values. So you can see in the 60s when you see movies that were made, usually movies that were made in the 60s, the hero was always a symbol of goodness. He would not have a single defect, or what may be called as a bad habit. You would never be seen smoking on the screen. You would never be seen drinking alcohol on the screen. And you would always be a very dutiful son to his mother, etc. Always fighting for the poor people, etc. etc. So this was what was seen as a hero. But in the 90s, when you have say movies like Khalnayak, or one or two movies of Shah Rukh Khan, where quite a lot of them, I'm just giving you one or two examples, where we see the hero is not exactly a very good man. We see him smoking, we see him drinking on the screen, that is. In other words, we see the idea of a hero having changed. So you can. So what is the idea of a hero that a particular movie is projecting? You can see, if you go by topics, if you are on lookout for topics, and if you're a little critical and observant, there is any number of topics that are available, that it's possible for you to choose from. So once you do that, then start researching, looking for more information on this, on the topic that you've chosen. Now, when you do that, the first thing that needs to be done is to find out if there are any studies, researches already done on the topic that you have chosen. This is what's called as a review of literature. That means you have chosen a topic. Has it been researched on? Because if it is already researched on, if some study has already been conducted, then there's no point in you doing it again. Meaning, in other words, you are wasting your time because your study is a duplication. Someone else has already done it. Leave that. Because remember what I said about research? Research should add to the existing body of knowledge. If that knowledge already exists, then there's nothing new that you can say. That point has already been made. What's your point? You cannot say the same thing that someone else has said. That does not constitute an argument at all. It's only a matter of repetition. So usually in research is supposed to bring new knowledge, not repeat the same thing that already has been said. So you have to find out whether something like what you have in mind has already been done. Now, when you do that, then this is what's called as, this phase is what's called as the reviewing stage. That means you're trying to say that no one else has done this kind of a study. I'm going to do it. That means you have found a gap in the existing body of knowledge. And your research will fill up that gap. This is how you go about selecting your topic. Like I said, then how do I use the information I find? So the information that you find may be primarily used in two ways. Like I said, to draw up the review of literature, what in research terminology we call ROL. And then identify text that can be used as support text. What text can be used to strengthen your argument? That's what we mean by support texts. There may be someone who has written or done his or her research on a topic close to your topic, not exactly the topic that you've chosen, but close to your topic. So how are children depicted in movies that were made in 1960s? Well, that research may have been done. Now you can update it and say, how are children depicted today in 2020 in movies? You can update it. So then for you, the study that was done about depiction of children in 1960s, that will become some kind of a takeoff point for you. You can say that in 1960s, this is how children were depicted, but in 2020, this is how children are being depicted. There, you see, you can begin with that. But remember, unless you're observant, unless you look at things that rather with a critical mindset, there's no way that you will be able to arrive at a topic. You will have to, and that topic must be related to or must grow out of your personal interest. That means you must be interested in knowing about it. Doing research because that is, writing a research paper uh, because that's made mandatory by the Department of English or the university or the college that you study in, that's one thing. But for it to be meaningful, then it must somewhere or the other strike a chord, a personal chord. That means you must be able to vibe with the topic, connect with the topic on personal terms. Then your research will be interesting for you because you are interested in knowing more. Once you are interested in knowing more, automatically the paper that you write and the dissertation that you submit, that will be very, very interesting to read. Otherwise, if it doesn't strike a personal chord, if you cannot vibe with it, you are not in sync with the topic. There's no personal sync with the topic. You won't go very far. You will see this as drudgery. You will begin to curse all the people in the Department of English or in your institution for having made dissertation or research paper compulsory. It won't be an enjoyable experience for you. For many of us, research has been a very enjoyable experience. We've learned a lot. When I was doing my MPhil, when I was doing my PhD, I've learned a lot. I've been able to learn a lot. I've enjoyed it tremendously because of only one reason, that the topics that I chose were things that I wanted to know more about personally. And they somehow became, they got me my PhD, they got me my MPhil degrees. That's how it should be for you. If it is done that way, then you will find it very, very interesting. There will be personal involvement. So I would always suggest that instead of going to your teachers and asking them to suggest a topic, because they will suggest a topic, they may suggest a topic that they are interested in, but because you've pestered them, they will give you the topic, but you don't have any personal interest in that topic. So it will become very, very dry for you because you're not interested in knowing it. What is it that you're interested in knowing? Ask yourself. You can choose a good topic depending on how well you know yourself. If you know yourself reasonably well, then you will be able to get a good topic. Unfortunately, we seem to know a lot about others. We know very little about ourselves. That's the reason why we don't know what interests us. And if we don't know what interests us, then it will become a little difficult for us to choose a topic on our own. And we have to rely on maybe our parents, maybe our friends, maybe our teachers to help us select a topic. As far as possible, look at yourself. What is it that interests you? What is it that you would like to know more? Here is an opportunity for you to know something more and also fulfill a condition that has been imposed by your institution. Once you do that, once you ensure that that topic is something that you would like to know more about personally, you must also have some curiosity to know more. If you are a student, curiosity is something that should come naturally or automatically to you. Unfortunately, if you're a student and you're not curious, you must be curious about something or the other, correct? After all, you live in a society, and there are so many things that happen in the society. And you must be curious about one or two at least. If you are not, then I would simply ask, what kind of a student are you? See, it's another matter that you may not write an answer very well. That's okay. That's acceptable to me. But as a student, if you're not curious, that becomes a little difficult for me to accept, that the student is not curious. The student may not be very interested in knowing more about, say, moon. Forget it. But there must be something else that the student is more interested. All students may not be interested in the same thing. But there is something or the other. There's so many things that are happening in our lives. There's so many things that are happening in our society, or some aspect of history. So many things. Something or the other must be interesting for us. We must be curious about something or the other. For example, why do people have tattoos? On what kind of tattoos would they want? That also is, you see, a topic for research. You can get 10 people who have tattooed, make a study of the kind of tattoos that they have chosen and why they've chosen. And see, this is also, like I said, you may not be interested in knowing what happened in 1947. Forget it. Some of us will be, some of us will not be. That's okay. But basically, you must be interested in something. You must be curious about something. What is it that you're curious about? Your topic can be that. If you know yourself well, then getting a topic that suits you, or rather that you have a personal interest in, shouldn't be difficult at all. That shouldn't be difficult at all. I think my 1 hour is done. If you have any specific questions, please go ahead and ask. Since you wanted to know about selecting a topic, how to select a topic, this is my suggestion. If you have any specific questions, I'd be very happy to answer or clarify. As you can notice, I just focused on one aspect of research. This is not the only aspect of research. But this is the beginning, the first step that you take. Selecting a topic. How do you select a topic? You select a topic based on, like I said, what you find interesting, what you want to know more about, what you're curious about. So if there are any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Girls, if you have any questions, please do post in the chat window. The moderators will communicate your questions to sir. Okay, so Kavya P has message saying, how much time does it take to finish one research paper?
Different people, it depends upon personally, it depends upon, in my experience, it depends upon your capabilities and the amount of time that you're willing to spend, the kind of resources that you have. Now, I've also written quite a few research papers. Some of them have taken 3 months. Some of them have taken 20-25 days. In fact, day before yesterday, I finished one research paper that I had to submit by 1st April. I finished it on 31st of March. I took about 20 days, 22 days for that. See, the whole point is when you begin, when it's your first paper, you tend to take more time. But when you're used to writing research papers, it's not your first paper, then you take lesser time. Generally, in order to do a research paper of say 3,000, 4,000 words, generally it should take about 1 month. if you are writing, I mean, will it be a good research paper? Well, you may, some of us may take 6 months to write and not still write a good research paper. Some of us may take 20-25 days and still manage to write a good research paper. But remember, the research paper must have an argument. If your argument is clear and you're able to present your views, arguing for your perspective, that's good. That's a good research paper. It may take maybe 1 month if you're writing, say, 3,000, 4,000 words.
We have another question, sir, from Deepika. She says, after selecting the topic, what are the subtopics? If the topic is importance of literature in freedom struggle or partition, what exactly, like how exactly should we go about developing on that particular topic?
Okay,
Yeah.
so now something like, say, you can, with that topic, what role did literature play in freedom movement? Let us say we have something like that. Then first contextualize. How do you present your argument? Contextualize. Prove that literature did impact in some way or the other the freedom movement. Right? And then find texts that will help you illustrate this point that you have. Your point is, your argument is this, that literature impacted freedom movement. That's your point. See, in a way, it's arguable, right? People may say, what can literature do? Literature did not do anything for freedom movement. It was people who worked on the ground. Literature is something that's there in the books. Who will read that? And the real freedom movement actually was concerned people on the street, coming down on the street, demonstrating, doing satyagraha, etc., etc. See, that's one point of view. But here you are arguing, you are saying that literature did impact the freedom movement or the freedom struggle, or played a very important role in the freedom struggle. You can see that there can be counter arguments. So this is a good topic. Then the next thing that you do is select some novels, 1 or 2, one will do for you, and show that that novel did impact the freedom movement. So that way you will be arguing that literature did impact or had an impact or affected in some way or the other or contributed to the freedom movement. And you are doing that by illustrating. That's your point, that's your argument, and then you're illustrating. You're saying, say, here is an example. This novel or this short story can be seen as an example of literature having impacted or played an important role in freedom struggle, something like that. So the first thing that you do is arrive at a topic like that, then do some background reading. Has anyone done any work that way? I mean, on that topic. No one may have done it exactly on that topic, but they may have done it in topics that may be similar. For example, role of literature in Renaissance, or role of literature in Russian Revolution or French Revolution, etc. So you see, the topics, though not exactly the same, are similar. So you take a look at those studies. They will help you support your argument. So you basically look for supports. So someone has argued, there is a study which says that literature impacted Russian Revolution. No one may have done on this topic, that is, literature impacted freedom struggle. No one may have done that. You can do it. But something similar to it is already there. You can use that as a model, and that will help you to advance your argument. You can base your argument on the strength of that. So the next thing that you do is go ahead and read and see if there are any similar such studies. There will be. Though it may not be directly related, it might be indirectly related. There will be some study of it. And in this age, you cannot say that no one has done any study on anything. I mean, on a given topic, there will be studies. As a researcher, it's your responsibility to find out. Anything else now? I hope I answered your question. I mean, whoever asked that question, I hope I answered the question.
In case if you have any other questions also to ask in connection to what sir has told, you can post that as well. So we'll move to the next question. So we have Yashoda P asking, so what are the contents to be included to submit a complete research paper or a dissertation?
Basically, the contents will be different. I mean, how you present a dissertation will be different from how you present your research paper. For the simple reason that research paper is briefer, dissertation is longer. The contents will actually provide a design to your dissertation. How exactly have you gone about doing your research? So when you do your research, you split it into different stages, right? The first stage is you contextualize. That means you provide a context to your study. Any study for that matter exists in a context. You take out that context, the study does not exist. Study does not have any meaning. See, if I'm talking to you today, it has a context, the academic writing. You take out that context, my talk is meaningless. So anything, any research also exists in a context. Now you contextualize the study. The second part would be the next part. Once you contextualize, meaning in other words, provide a context to your study. In what context are you locating your study? So in the earlier case, the role of literature in freedom movement. Now you are locating it in the context of freedom movement and different things that impacted the freedom movement. Literature was not the only one. You may argue that literature impacted the freedom movement, fine. But literature was not the only thing that impacted the freedom movement. So there were other things that also impacted the freedom movement. However, you are locating it in the context of freedom movement and different things that contributed to or impacted the freedom movement. That is your context. Create that context. See, your study must be located in a context, right? So what is the context? This is how you go about study the context. I mean, locate it in a context. The next thing that you do is see if there are other studies that are similar, though not exactly the same. Then quote them. Say that this study states this, this study states this, this study, there has been a study that has been done on this, state that. That's the review of literature stage. And then argue your case. You argue that literature impacts our political, social lives. And we can see that in the case of Russian Revolution. We can see that in the case of French Revolution, or even for that matter, American independence. So that's how you argue. And then say, even in India, this happened, but the same thing happened. And this is a text that is bringing out, we can see as having influenced the freedom movement. Then analyze the text. That's your, those are the different stages. So your contents will also, if you are writing a dissertation, your contents will also follow these stages. That means you're presenting your research in a systematic manner. The content basically will tell in the order in which you present it. Now, when it comes to a research paper, you may not have the contents page, but it will also have aims, objectives, research questions, and things like that. It will have, though it may not have subheadings, but because the research paper usually is, like I told you, briefer, say 3,000, 4,000 words. So it may not have subheadings, it may not have chapters, but these will be there. See, in a research paper, you may have a thesis statement. In a dissertation, you will have research questions. What are research questions? Basically, those questions that you want to research. That is, if you're writing a dissertation, look at your dissertation as an answer, right? The answer, that the kind of answer that you write in an exam. The difference is this: in an exam, your teachers may give you the question. Here, you formulate the question. What question would you like to answer? How did literature impact Indian independence? Did literature impact Indian independence? These become your questions. These are called research questions. Basically, what questions would you like to answer? Those questions become your research questions. So this will be common, though you may not have subheadings in a research paper, for the only reason that it is briefer, 3,000, 4,000 word, but they will somewhere or the other in the early part of the research paper make a mention of these things. That is, what is it that the paper intends to do, and how does it intend to do? This is what we mean by aims and objectives, right? Any research will have its own aim and or aims and objectives. Many people think that there is no difference between aims and objectives and they mean one and the same. No, they're different. By aim, what we mean is what you want to do. By objective, how do you plan to do it? A very crude kind of an example that I'll give you, very crude. After your college, I mean, assuming that if it is offline, so you come to the college, then what do you do after your college, after your class, or want to go home, right? So the aim is to go home. I mean, I'm talking about those people who want to go. Even those people who want to go elsewhere, that's a different issue. That's their aim. Let's say that is aim. What do you want to do? I want to go home, or I want to go to my friend's house. That's your aim. How do you want to go? That's your objective. You can go by bus. You can go by an auto rickshaw, or you may have your own vehicle, or you may want to walk, or you may want to go by a cab. These are different ways in which you can go to your house or your friend's house after your college. So aim is what you want to do. In this case, you want to go home. Objective is how do you plan to go? There must be a plan, right? There must be a plan. If you're going home, there must be some plan. Maybe your parents will pick you up, or maybe you will walk. There must be some plan. That is what we mean by objective. How do you plan to do it? What do you want to do, and how do you plan to do it? Aims and objectives. This will be there in both your dissertation as well as your research paper. In a dissertation, they may have subheadings, aims, objectives, research questions, etc. You will have subheadings there because the number of words that are available to you is more there. So when you write 25, 30, 40 pages dissertation, obviously you'll have more space there. When you're writing a 3,000, 4,000 word paper, it will be fewer. I mean, meaning the space that is available to you, the number of words that will be available to you, that will be fewer. So research paper may not have separate subheadings, but they will have these components. They're required to have these components. So what I would suggest is, please do read some good research papers. That is very easily available on the internet. Please do read some good research papers and analyze the structure. What is it doing in the first few paragraphs? What is it doing in the middle? What is it doing at the end? And then how are references given? I mean, that is a topic for another day. What we call as MLA and APA citations. How do we cite? I was talking to you about conventions in academic writing. One of them is to adhere to referencing styles. See, academic writing, another characteristic about academic writing is that it's scholarly writing. It's not something that is written by a common person. It's something that is written by a scholar. You become a scholar when you do research. Since any dissertation or research paper requires research, then you become a scholar. So academic writing is also scholarly writing. So you have to show an awareness of what other scholars have done. And also, you see, present it in a specific way. So when you cite, when you quote, you have to quote either in agreement or disagreement of some study or the other that may have been carried out by some author or the other. When you do it, this is what we call a citation. You have to acknowledge, otherwise it will become plagiarism. Now, there are two ways in which you can cite generally in literary studies. It is MLA, Modern Language Association. So how exactly do you go about citing? Again, that's a part of convention. It will take another hour for me to explain, help. But I was focusing here only on the early stages of the research. These are the early stages of research, choosing a topic, and what do you do after having chosen a topic? How do you go about organizing information that you get? This is what I was more concerned with in my presentation here. So I may not have touched on that, but that's something that comes later. But the early part is this, because I was told that you were in the early part of your research or dissertation or thesis or other research paper writing. So the early part is this, choosing the topic.
Thank you, sir. We have another question here.
Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So by Ashwini Kebala, she says, clear about choosing the topic, sir. But after choosing, how to start writing, sir? For example, if we choose on any problem facing nowadays, like problem that we are facing nowadays, should we start with the problem or should we start with the causes?
No. Why do you think that it's a problem? First of all, if you're saying that's your topic, problems we are facing today, why do you think that it's a problem? In what way is it a problem? You will have to first establish that. You have to argue that it is a problem. That is something that you have to establish. First, you have to prove that it's a problem. And in what way is it a problem? A problem is something that affects us negatively. It may be financially, politically, or whatever. It should affect us negatively. Then it becomes a problem. So you show that it affects us negatively. How do you show it? Then you have to prove. Then you have to take sources. First, show that it is a problem. Right? First, show that it's a problem. That's how you begin. You have to prove. You're saying that something is a problem. No, I will ask, why is it a problem? How is it a problem? Because there will always be, remember, counter argument. Remember, you are debating. So you have to first convince me that it is a problem. Go ahead and do that. Show why it's a problem, how it's a problem, why it can be seen as a problem. That's how you go about doing it. I mean, presenting your research. First, show that it's a problem. You see, if there is a traffic jam, is it a problem or not? Yeah, it's a problem. Why? Why is it a problem? It affects us in different ways. How does it affect us? Show that. Then you prove that it's a problem. But it cannot be as vague as this different problems that affect us in the society today. It cannot be as vague as that. You have to be a little more specific, and you have to choose text for that. Either a movie or literary text. Choose. See, in some certain movies may present certain things as a problem. Right. So choose those movies or choose those texts in which whatever you want to see, or rather whatever you want to prove is a problem, is depicted there, is shown there. Then you will have a basis to argue your point. But if it's a problem, why is it a problem? How is it a problem? How is it affecting you? Or how is it affecting anyone? You prove that it is affecting people. Merely saying that we see that students are reaching college late because of traffic jam, that won't do. That's a very general statement. You have to show, you have to prove, you have to take individual cases. So you have to collect data for that. If you want to do a quantitative study on it. So if it's a qualitative study, same thing can be a qualitative study. Then take certain movies, novels, etc., in which something is presented as a problem. And there it will be textual analysis. Here it will be data analysis. That's how you have to go first. Show that it's a problem and why it's a problem.
We have another question here, sir, by Shweta Y. She says, sir, in conclusion, we should we include only our perspective or general perspective on the topic?
See, in your conclusion, you should highlight your major findings. Your major findings, not general. It's your research. It's your point of view. It's not the point of view of the society that you're presenting. It's your point of view that you're presenting. So it should be your findings. Because it's your study, right? Since it's your study, then you have to present your findings, not the general findings. Your findings.
Okay, Halima has asked one more question, sir. She says, like, is it necessary to use only English books and novels?
No.
Or can you use different language books as well?
You can use. Now, the point is this, see, someone who's maybe supervising or someone who might be evaluating your thesis or your dissertation or your research paper may not know that language. You probably, let's say, you can read Arabic or you can read, say, Swedish language. I cannot, or your supervisor may not be able to. Then what we generally say is, see if its English translation is available. It's not necessary, actually, not necessary, but it should be in the English language. But the point is this, that if I have to know what you're saying, then I must know that language. Unfortunately, I may not know Arabic or read and write Arabic or Swedish language or French language for that matter. So see if English translations are available. If English translations, see if you're working on, say, Swedish movies, see if English subtitles are available. See, what you do your research on must be available in the public domain. That means it must be accessible to others also, not just to you. It must be accessible to others also. Though I may have to make some efforts in order to access it. That's okay, but it must be available. It must be available in the public domain. So if it is translated into English, that would be very good. Only reason is this, that's all. Someone, your supervisor or the examiner, or when you make a presentation, others may not be aware of it. I mean, may not be able to read and write in that language. So therefore we say, see if its English translations are available. You can work on the same novel or the same text or same short story or poem or songs, but see if their English translations are available. If they're not available, you can translate it. You can translate it. And then say that since translations were not available, I translate.
Okay. So next we have Shweta Y, who says, like, can we select, okay, when I select topic like Indian tribal community, how do I do the chapterization? So what are the subtopics that I should include?
Which tribe are you selecting first? Right? How are you going to make the study? Are you going to go there, live, observe? How are you going to make that study? First plan that. Okay, you can study a study of Indian tribe. Fine. Which tribe? How are you going to study? Are you going to go there and stay? Which aspect of their lives do you want to study? The cultural aspect, the political aspect? That's something that you can do. These are, some of it is what we call as ethnographic studies. This kind of a study may be called an ethnographic study in the sense that you go there and live. I mean, how do you study a tribe? You have to go there and live, observe. And if you go there just for half an hour, 1 hour, that's not good enough. If your study has to have any meaning, then you have to have some kind of an in-depth experience of that tribe or life lived in that tribe. Once you do that, you will know how to organize it. The problem with those kind of topics is that because they will demand you to spend time, a reasonable amount of time with the tribals. Or you can do one thing. How are tribals depicted in movies? You can select some movie in which tribals play an important role, or are shown as playing an important role, or given an important role. There are so many movies, so many novels that have that. Select one and show how tribals are depicted. So you have something there. You don't have to go and live with the tribes, but that would be an ethnographic study. You will have to go and stay there. I mean, partially ethnographic, but you will have to go and live there with them for a reasonable amount of time. Otherwise, how are you going to study? You tell me. How are you going to tell me? And why should I consider what you've written as authentic if it does not arise from your own experiences? And how can you experience? You have to go and live there. Simple. You have to go and live there, not for half an hour, 1 hour, but for an extended period of time. If you can do that, yes, it's possible. And that kind of a study is possible. Those are what we call as partially ethnographic study. This particular thing that you said is partially ethnographic.
We have another question here by Shweta again. Suppose if we select a topic such as teacher's life or any professional aspects for literary component writing, can it be done, or how are we going to treat that particular subject?
Now, please repeat, ma'am. What is the topic?
A teacher's life. Suppose if they are analyzing a particular teacher's life or a group of teachers' life, their professional, from a professional aspect. It need not be just teachers alone, any professions for that matter. So how are they going to continue with their research? So what, aspect of that like should be dealt at length?
And then you have to, if you're taking people from across different professions, not just teachers, from across different professions, then you have to identify a common element, something that's common to doctors, teachers, lawyers, because you are saying that you want to do it across the disciplines or rather across the professions. Then you have to choose a common element and see how this common element can be seen in different professions, and then go about doing a survey. How do lawyers look at that element? How do they respond to that element? How teachers do that? How doctors do that? How accountants do that? How physicists do that? The same element, how exactly do they go about doing it? That's how you have to go. Then you have to go and do a survey or have a questionnaire that will take enough number of doctors, teachers, etc., and arrive at a comparison. but there must be one aspect or two aspects, same, that you must identify in all the professions, and see how physicists look at that, how doctors look at it, how teachers look at it, or things like that. That's how you can go about. For that, you will need a survey or questionnaire or interviews. That's again a quantitative study. There was another question that had come on the chat. I don't know. Can you?
One more question is there, sir.
Yeah, please.
That is ancient mythology, a debatable topic. Can that be considered for research? Or if you're considering how to go about with that, like.
Let me think. Ancient mythology. No, you can do one thing. You can fine tune that topic, and you can see. I mean, you can see how we make use of these mythologies or legends or legendary characters or mythological characters today. What is their role that they play in today's world? For example, you know that there has been a lot of what's called as revisionist writing. In the last 20-15 years, we see a lot of mythological characters being revisited by several writers, or say mythological text like say a text like Mahabharata or Ramayana being reinterpreted. You can study that. You can study how mythological character is being presented in the 21st century to us. Instead of talking about mythological characters in general, that's vague, that does not have any argument, that does not have a point of view at all. But if you formulate it this way, then it's something that you can research on. It's something that you can do a paper on. So how is Sita presented in some novel that's written in 2010? Kavita Hane, one of those writers, written a couple of texts on Sita, Draupadi, and other characters, not just these, other mythological characters. And all these have been written the last 20-25 years. Select one or two and see how Sita is presented in one novel and how Sita is presented in another novel. Two novels you can take and make a comparison of the same mythological character being represented in 20th or 21st century. Then that would be researchable. That would be a researchable topic. Another question that had appeared on the chat, I don't know.
It is from Darshini, sir.
I don't remember, but there was another question.
Okay, so she says, like, Darshini is, I'm able to see her. So she says, what if I take topic which made a revolution through English literature? How can I study this? Because it's obvious good thing and we can't debate on it. Is that what you were referring to, sir?
Yeah, that's a question that I was referring to. Yes, you see, the whole point is first, like I said in the earlier while answering one of or giving an example earlier, what role did literature play in impacting Indian freedom movement? See, if we can see Indian freedom movement as a revolution, then it is possible for us to study. Why not? How did it impact? See, you will have to show in the case like that it impacted that movement. Now, we have enough researchers showing how Voltaire's writings, Rousseau and Voltaire's writings, impacted the French Revolution. Right? We know that. There have been a lot of researchers. So, in other words, we can look at these studies that have already been done and use them as a model and argue our case. Like I said, how did literature depict emergency, something that's closer to our time, 1976, 77. Quite a lot of novels have been written. Or how did literature depict partition? Quite a lot of texts have been written, and quite a bit of research also has been done. I'm just giving you examples. So instead of saying revolution in general, I would say select a specific event. Say emergency, independence, French Revolution, and then go about doing that. Then that would be a little more specific, rather than it being too very general and vague. If it's general and vague, then it, as you said, it would not be debatable at all. But if it is specific, then it can be debatable. That's how you go about doing it. Not necessarily English literature, any literature for that matter. Even Kannada regional literatures have also played a very important role in freedom movement. See, one of the most important things that happened during the freedom movement, for example, so there are one or two questions on the freedom movement. I'm answering this question. I mean, I'm giving you some leads on this topic. See, one of the things that freedom movement did was to bring about a nationalistic feeling on what is called as an understanding or idea of nationalism in India. Meaning, in other words, people were able to rise beyond, people were forced to, expected to, and made to rise beyond their regional identities. Because what was being fought for was Indian independence, and not independence of Karnataka, or not independence of West Bengal, or not independence of Maharashtra. These were diverse people, and yet all of them were able to rise beyond their regional identities. So people in Karnataka rose beyond their identity as Kannadigas. They saw themselves as Indians, just as West Bengal, people in West Bengal, Bengalis, saw themselves as Indians and not as Bengalis. Just like people in Maharashtra did not see themselves as Maharashtrians, but saw themselves as Indians. See, now the regional literature, if you go to the regional literatures, you will see attempts are being made to take people from the regional level to the national level. That you can do. You will be able to find that. That would be possible for you.
Okay, so then we have another question here. Suppose if we are writing about a book, should we add a summary of the book in the start of the paper? Or can we add a summary of the book in the start of the paper?
Yeah, maybe third paragraph, fourth paragraph, very briefly. Don't let your entire paper not be summary. Maybe if it's a research paper, then I mean, like say 3,000, 4,000 words, then your summary must not take more than 100, 120, 150 words. But
if it's a dissertation, sir?
If it's a dissertation, maybe about 1.5 pages. That's what I said. You see, research is not about summarization. Summarization is only to provide some kind of an idea about the text that you are reading to someone who may not have read. Yeah, can we choose topic? There's one here. Let me.
Yeah. So topic related to social issues like child labor.
Pooja Shankar asks, can we choose the topic related to social issues like child labor and Devdasi concept, etc.? Yes, you can. You can, but the problem is, how are you going to study? That's why I said, you see, what you would like to choose is what we may call as aim. Then you must show how you propose to do that. How do you propose to study the Devdasi concept? How do you propose to do that? There are different ways of doing it. See, for example, once again, see how Devdasis are presented in art or movies. That's one way of studying the Devdasis. Going and living among the Devdasis or interviewing Devdasis, that's another method. So you choose the method, and the method that we choose must be dependent upon our resources. If you have to go and spend time, say 3 months, 2 months among the Devdasis, you may not have the time, you may not have the money. So don't select that. I mean, that mode. You see, the point is you're doing this as students and you have limited time, limited resources. So it would be better for you to choose some movie in which Devdasis are presented and analyze it, because you can do that without spending too much of time going there, I mean, and money, because what topic you choose must be dependent on the resources that you have, the time that you have, the money that you can spend. All these are important. So if you are required to go to a region where the Devdasi system is in practice, then you will have to spend some time there, right? Now, do you have those resources? Would it be possible for you to go and spend, say, 1 or 2 months, understand this lifestyle, etc.? Or that's one. Second, another way is to take a movie in which Devdasis are presented and see how their life is presented or how Devdasis are depicted. Or take 2 movies in which Devdasis are presented and make a contrast, make a comparison. That you can do. Even child labor for that matter.
Trisha Reddy has a question.
Hmm.
Is it good to choose a topic that is controversial or communal?
Yes, but your supervisor and your institution must allow it, na?
Okay, another
Yeah.
question, sir. Deepika C. She says, can we include pictures or diagrams in our dissertation?
Yeah, you can. You can.
The last question is, can we opt autobiography?
Oh, yes, perfectly. These days, you see, you have biopics, right? So you can select these biopics also. That's an emerging genre. In the last, I mean, it seems to have become very, very popular in the last 10, 15 years, right? The biopic. You used to have autobiographies. Now, biopics are becoming very, very popular. There being biopics made of cricketers, actresses, politicians. So you can choose autobiographies or biopics. You can choose. Absolutely. You can choose. Absolutely, no doubt. You can choose. See, the whole point is, again, going back to Pooja's question, the whole point is this. You need some data to analyze. Either you get the data or take the data that is available. To take the data that's available, then that means some movie that has already been made on Devdasis or something that depicts child labor. Because here you have something to analyze. Now, if you don't take this, then you have to collect data which you can analyze. That's why I said objectives. How do you plan to do it? You want to study the Devdasis, portrayal of Devdasis or life of Devdasis, fine. How do you propose to do it? Going and living among the Devdasis, or analyzing texts that depict or show Devdasis or have Devdasis in their narratives? There are 2 different ways. That's what I was trying to say. You have to evaluate, estimate, look at the resources that you have, the time that you have, then decide. See, when you do research, it's not as if you are going to answer all questions, right? No one can do that. You have to be realistic. Therefore, you choose one particular aspect and work on it. So you identify that. That becomes your aim. You identify that one specific thing that you can work on, do your research on, which you would be able to do in, say, the time that is allotted to you, stipulated, and with the resources that you have. Be realistic. Don't be very ambitious, because what time and resources are available to each one of us is limited. You have to be very, very realistic that way. See, some research that may be very interesting, that may be very, very meaningful, but it may take a long time, say 1 year. And then, do you have that much time? So don't choose those kind of topics. Choose topics that you will be able to do your research with all the constraints that you have. Be realistic. That's what I mean. If you only have tea powder at home and someone comes to your house, why do you want to make coffee? Make tea. Now you may say, sir, he may not drink. Well, there's nothing that you can do then give him water. That's all. Because you don't have coffee powder at home. Don't try to make coffee. Make tea and give it.
Okay, so those are the questions that were posted by the students. And in case if you have any questions, girls, you just feel free to share with us. We'll share it with sir and then get those.
I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
So as we are running out of time, that we'll conclude the session. So I thank once again Professor Yoganand for his lucid presentation. And I'm sure that your talk has enhanced the students in understanding the nuances of research and academic writing. And I also thank you for patiently clarifying all the queries that our students had. So as we wind up today's program, I request Professor Shrishma to propose the vote of thanks, followed by we have Amani Anthem, which will be sung to us by Professor Palguni Bhatt. So I now request Professor Shrishma to propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my privilege to present the vote of thanks. At the outset, I profusely thank today's resource person, Dr. Yoganand Kore, for sparing his precious time. So your deliberations on academic writing has been quite informative and enlightening for our students. It's going to be immensely contributing towards the upgradation of standards of our students in exhibiting research skills, especially. Not only the students, we, the faculty members, also were enriched and inspired by your talks. Once again, I thank you, sir. I extend my sincere gratitude to our management for their cooperation and motivation in all our initiatives. I thank our revered principal, Dr. Shashikala, under whose attentive guidance and supervision the event became a reality. We are indebted for your continued support and encouragement in all our endeavors. I would like to thank the head of the department, Professor Soumya, for initiating and actively involving and guiding us throughout the process of planning, organizing, and execution of the session. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank the organizing committee, the faculty of the Department of English, whose hard work and commitment made this webinar a success. I would like to thank our wonderful students who have turned up and actively participated in the event. And I thank all our teachers who have attended the meeting as well. Last but not the least, I would express my thanks to all the technicians for their technical assistance and support, without which this event would not have been possible. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shrishma. So before we wind up, we have posted the feedback link in a Zoom platform. I request the hosts, in the sense like Nischita, to post the same link in YouTube platform as well, so that students can fill up the feedback form. Kindly do that, girls. Your feedback form is posted in Zoom as well as in YouTube. Kindly fill that if you feel like you'll be receiving your certificate. Yes, now let us all raise to the Amani anthem.
ಒಂದೇ ಭಾವದ ಮನುಜರು ನಾವು ಒಂದಾಗಿ ಸಾಗೋಣ, ಅಮ್ಮಣ್ಣಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ವಿದ್ಯೆಯ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಬದುಕಲು ಕಲಿಯೋಣ. ಒಂದೇ ಭಾವದ ಮನುಜರು ನಾವು ಒಂದಾಗಿ ಸಾಗೋಣ, ಅಮ್ಮಣ್ಣಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ವಿದ್ಯೆಯ ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಬದುಕಲು ಕಲಿಯೋಣ. ಜ್ಞಾನದ ದೇವಿಗೆ ಕರದಲ್ಲಿ ಧರಿಸಿ ಕತ್ತಲು ಸರಿಸೋಣ, ದೇಶದ ಪ್ರಗತಿಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾನದ ಕೊಡುಗೆಯ ಸೇರುತ್ತ ನೀಡೋಣ. ಅರಸು ಆಶ್ರಯಕ್ಕೆ ಎನ್.ವಿ. ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರಿಯ ಸೇವೆಯ ಸ್ಮರಿಸೋಣ, ಹಿಂದಿನ ಸಾಧಕರ ಮಾರ್ಗದಿಂದಲೇ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಪಡೆಯೋಣ. ಅರಸು ಆಶ್ರಯಕ್ಕೆ ಎನ್.ವಿ. ಶಾಸ್ತ್ರಿಯ ಸೇವೆಯ ಸ್ಮರಿಸೋಣ, ಹಿಂದಿನ ಸಾಧಕರ ಮಾರ್ಗದಿಂದಲೇ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಪಡೆಯೋಣ. ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಪಡೆಯೋಣ, ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯ ಪಡೆಯೋಣ. ಒಂದೇ ಭಾವದ ಮನುಜರು ನಾವು ಒಂದಾಗಿ ಸಾಗೋಣ, ಮಹಿಳಾ ಶಕ್ತಿಯ ಉತ್ತುಂಗವನ್ನು ಸಾಧಿಸಿ ತೋರೋಣ. ಶಾಂತಿಯ ಮಂತ್ರದ ನೂತನ ಚಿಂತನೆ ಹೃದಯದಿ ಹರಿಸೋಣ, ನೀಲಿ ಅನಂತವ ಗುಲಾಬಿ ಮಿದುವನು ಎಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ಹರಡೋಣ. ಪೀತವರ್ಣದಿ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಆತ್ಮದಿ ಬೆರೆಯೋಣ, ನೀಲಿ ಅನಂತವ ಗುಲಾಬಿ ಮಿದುವನು ಎಲ್ಲೆಡೆ ಹರಡೋಣ. ಪೀತವರ್ಣದಿ ಲಕ್ಷ್ಮಿ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಆತ್ಮದಿ ಬೆರೆಯೋಣ, ಆತ್ಮದಿ ಬೆರೆಯೋಣ, ಆತ್ಮದಿ ಬೆರೆಯೋಣ. ಒಂದೇ ಭಾವದ ಮನುಜರು ನಾವು ಒಂದಾಗಿ ಸಾಗೋಣ, ಹೊಸ ಹೊಸ ಚಿಂತನೆ ಬಗೆ ಬಗೆ ಯೋಜನೆ ಜ್ಞಾನದಿ ಬೆಳೆಯೋಣ. ಬನ್ನಿರಿ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕುಲಮತ ಮರೆತು ಬೆರೆಯುತ್ತ ಹಾಡೋಣ, ದೇಶ ಸೇವೆಯೇ ಈಶ ಸೇವೆ ಎಂಬ ನಾಣ್ಣುಡಿ ಒಪ್ಪೋಣ. ಶೀಲಂ ಪರಮಭೂಷಣವೆಂಬ ಘೋಷಣೆ ಸಾರೋಣ, ದೇಶ ಸೇವೆಯೇ ಈಶ ಸೇವೆ ಎಂಬ ನಾಣ್ಣುಡಿ ಒಪ್ಪೋಣ. ಶೀಲಂ ಪರಮಭೂಷಣವೆಂಬ ಘೋಷಣೆ ಸಾರೋಣ, ಘೋಷಣೆ ಸಾರೋಣ, ಘೋಷಣೆ ಸಾರೋಣ, ಘೋಷಣೆ ಸಾರೋಣ. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for that beautiful rendition. So thank you all for joining, and we wish you a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Girls, feedback form link is posted both in Zoom platform as well as in YouTube platform. I kindly request all the participants to fill the form so that you can receive your certificates. And kindly don't share this link with others who have not joined. It's only for the participants. Thank you, girls.